in Pinedale, Wyoming, which is western Wyoming in the upper Green River Valley at the headwaters of the Colorado system, to commemorate an important day in the conservation campaign to protect the greater sage-grouse. 9 Wyoming ranchers have signed long-term conservation agreements with the Fish and Wildlife Service to continue doing practices that provide habitat for sage-grouse. The program is known as a Candidate Conservation Agreement with Assurances. And essentially what it is an insurance policy. The Fish and Wildlife Service gets an agreement from the rancher to have conservation practices that benefit the sage-grouse on the private land, and in return, the rancher receives assurances that in the event of a listing, no additional conservation work will be required.
I will say that Wyoming was way ahead of the curve. More than a decade ago, Wyoming recognized the importance of these ecosystems and started to take steps to protect the habitat important to the sage-grouse. We're now 10 years into the future. A few years ago, Governor Mead stepped up to co-chair the Sage-Grouse Task Force. 11 western states working together across these landscapes to make sure that with the different threats that exist in different areas, that everybody comes to the table.
We know we have to have these populations. We know we have to do a good job on wildlife. And as you talk to ranchers, you know that they are dedicated not only to doing a good job on their ranch, but they recognize this balance and they provide leadership for the rest of us on how to go about it the right way.
The Fish and Wildlife Service would love to have healthy environments so that the need for a listing as threatened or endangered for this bird is not required or not warranted because of the stuff that's happening on the ground.
When you look at the federal government and state governments throughout the country, we manage about 25 to 30% of the land mass in the United States, and private landowners manage the rest. The important part of that nationwide is that we are really seeing a revolution in the conservation of wildlife and endangered species, where private landowners are coming to the table, and it's important that they do.
I think if managers, whether it's fish or wildlife or land management agencies, you have to provide options that are workable. You look for solutions not only from the agencies, but look for them from those of us that have been here.
You know, what's happening with the greater sage-grouse and the conservation efforts around the sage steppe ecosystems is a model for what we're likely to look at. You know, these ecosystems know no political boundaries. They are on private land, they're on state land, they're on federal land. Some of them are really critical habitat, some are not. We need people to work together to understand those ecosystems.
We're working with a species that's been challenged for 100 years. And we're now stepping up to find ways to return the ecosystem to more of what it was in the past, and to give an opportunity to recognize those people who have worked so hard in the ecosystem up to now and will continue to make it better.
The ranchers that work these lands every day know all the ins and outs of the landscapes more than any of the public land managers can. They know where the creeks are, they know where the water sources are, they know where the lakes are. And so in working in partnership with them, we can help our resources go farther. It's not about a sage-grouse. It's actually about a sagebrush ecosystem. It's about an intact ecosystem that is so critical for lots of wildlife in the West and for the Western way of life. That's what we're talking about here.
If we, the people of this nation, want to conserve and preserve wildlife in the West, I think it's really important that we also conserve and preserve these working landscapes. That's the key. In order to find great solutions, we're going to have great partnerships. We're going to have a real sense that we can work together. CCAAs and CCAs could be a component to help that.
In addition to the CCAA, there's also a Candidate Conservation Agreement, or CCA. A CCA is an agreement between federal agencies to manage federal land to benefit certain species. In this case, ranching operations out here depend on both private land for wintering their cattle and for growing hay for the winter season, and also the public land for summer grazing. Together, these two programs can provide conservation for the greater sage-grouse across this landscape.
So we're looking at conservation on a landscape scale, and that is how this planet works. That's how these ecosystems work. So this is pioneering work being done right here in Wyoming and across the sage steppe ecosystems, and it's going to provide a model for cooperation for the long-range future of our ecosystems and the health of the West as we know it.